It is finally the 31st of March 2020. If you add up to 3/31, 2020, you're going to get an 11. In the yogic numerology and in the numerological system that I work with, which is a mixture of astrology, numerology, tarot numerology, and yogic numerology, the number 11 is a number of transcendence and expansion. But with all expansion comes contraction. As we grow and we expand and open, there are those out there that get afraid and try and pull us backwards in time to old places that are familiar, that they feel as if they have control. Because when you expand, you don't really have control. If anybody hasn't noticed, everything is expanding and we don't have control. and in that, there are people that want to contract down and take the one and the one and add them together and make the number two, which is the number of negative mind and critical mind. So they want to find fault, they want to point and blame, they want to find a reason for what is happening. And to me, the bottom line is the reason all this is happening is us. It's not anything more complicated than that. It's not a person or one person's choice or decision. It is all of us together have co-created this reality. And now we are going to have a massive expansion, which I am really excited about. The problem with expansion is that those that are not ready and are not willing to totally surrender into that expansion can use a lot of their life force energy to try and contract down. And I like to think of this as what the Mayan prophecies were saying, that there is this giant purple wave that will start to hit the planet, and it will move very, very, very slowly, but it is massive and it is huge. And it forces us to walk through its fire. And as we walk through its fire, it will burn away everything that is not real. And then we become the sweet curling smoke that can finally ascend to another level. And I found it so interesting that, many years ago they were talking about the ozone is thinning, and more ultraviolet light is coming through. And I thought that was interesting because the Mayans saw it as a purple wave, like a violet ray. And the violet ray that has been happening for a long time now is encoded with a tremendous amount of information for us. But we have to be open within ourselves in order to hear those lessons. So right now, with this expansion contraction, this transcendence, which is the 11, this collapsing, which is the 2. And I always find that when you're in an 11, you see both sides of this, no matter what. So with this, it's going to be difficult to stay strong if you listen to too much news. And I would suggest not doing that. As much as we like to be informed, it's going to get very, very scary and very depressing. And it's going to be very hard to hear for the next few months. So I like the internet to give me headlines and to keep me informed. I like things like the New York Times and the Washington Post, just because, I kind of get two sides of it. I love the NPR news because I think they're also really honest. And so while being informed, which is the number 11, because the 11 about expansion wants to have the information. And both the 11 and the 2 are mental numbers. So it's important to let yourself be informed, but it's also important to not let yourself fall into despair. If you keep to safety protocols and do the due diligence, you can take a lot of the risk factors out of your space. But rough times are definitely ahead, and that cannot be helped. So I live in a small town, and so we have minimal coronavirus at the moment, knocking on wood, which of course is not going to stay. And the challenge that we have is that when it hits, then we really don't have a lot of hospitals out here to actually help us. And that's why I'm practicing a lot of self isolation and staying put and not going anywhere, because I recognize what the risk factors are. So these rough times are coming no matter what we try and do. I mean, we have not hit the peak of this coronavirus. And so we're just going to have to go all the way through it. It's kind of like you've decided to catch the biggest wave of your entire life. And this wave is going to threaten to slam you against the coral and flip you and all sorts of things. And you may lose your board. You may have to really go through a lot of fear as you struggle to get to the surface of the emotional, watery chaos that you find yourself in. No matter what the world needs from all of us is compassion and caring. And that has been sorely lacking for the last many years. And I want you to take care and watch for the mind's incessant critical thinking. Put that discernment of the mind to work by doing a hard project that you have been putting off. Make something beautiful. It is okay if it is going to take time and planning. The more you can engage the mind in difficult and complicated tasks, the less it will bother your mood. So one of the things that when I'm teaching classes on channeling, I say one of the greatest ways to have a chat with your guides is to drive a car. And you're driving the car, and you have to drive the car, and your left brain has to drive the car and look for the signs and the stop signs and to the traffic in front of you. And because your left brain is engaged on that level, your right brain has a chance to free float, which is what it prefers to do. And so I always imagine that one of my guides or my angels is sitting in the passenger seat next to me. And so I just have these little conversations. I'm like, this is interesting. Coronavirus. What is this really about? What are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to do in this? And then I wait for the answer that comes in that doesn't sound like my mind. It actually sounds like a surprise, like, oh, well, I hadn't thought of that. That's an interesting idea. So I look for the unusual thing that doesn't sound like my own thoughts. It doesn't sound like information that I've had on the television. It sounds like something original and unique and different. So I would suggest that by creating a task. My task at the moment is gardening, even though it's been raining for the last few days. It's like doing all the prep for the gardening so that I have to think it through. I have to organize it. What am I going to do? What am I going to plant? Where am I going to plant it? How much am I going to plant it so that my mind is engaged in a complicated task that is somewhat difficult but is manageable and doable. Now, the astrology on Tuesday, the 31st, makes everything get a little bit more serious, like you really didn't want to hear that at this moment. I mean, like, oh God, because Mars aligns with the practical, stern, disciplinarian planet Saturn, and it's in Capricorn. And Saturn is in Aquarius. Sorry. So Saturn is actually in Aquarius. It's not in Capricorn. So I was just like, wait a second, I have that wrong. I wrote that wrong. So what we want to do is we want to tend to business. And all things are going to get rougher from here out for the next few months. We're in a Cancer moon, which longs for the old reality, and use this time to relax, rest, and do things that will allow your immune system to be strong. Stress suppresses the immune system, so staying calm is really, really important. Though sleeping is still really a bugaboo, and I know even for myself, sleep is problematic. And I can tell that even when I'm sleeping, my dreams are coming up because I'm feeling this global anxiety, and I'm sure I'm not the only person, and it tends to wake me up. Right? So I want you to have security in your home by keeping things clean and following protocols for making sure that you do not bring anything into your sanctuary. And Mars in Aquarius conjuncts Saturn in Aquarius. So, as a result, opposites are going to battle it out. And because of that, people are going to die and others will become at higher risk. So nothing is going to move quickly from this moment forward. Saturn is not a planet that you can tell to rush. He is, after all, the god of time. And you need an outlet for this intense anger and frustration that is bubbling to the surface. So do some outside work. And I know it's about if weather permits. And I know that they have closed the beaches. And I know that they have closed the national parks. And I know that there are so many things that are not letting you go outside because, everybody doesn't want to be responsible for you getting ill because you suddenly are on the beach with 1,000 people, right? So we need to be physical. We need to move. You need to sweat. You need to push the body. You need to help mitigate some of this anger and anxiety. Many things are going to have to be reevaluated, and many problems are still ahead. And we have really only begun this fight. Because of the upcoming obstacles, you have to pace yourself. So you have to calm down right now, recognize that there's no way out but through, and we're all in this together. Not one of us is not going to be in this with everybody else. Feel that connection that is supporting all of us with each other, that you are not alone, right? And figure out how you can be highly responsible for yourself and your family. And you're going to need a very clear mind and have a fabulous objective judgment as circumstances globally and nationally develop. So if you're panicking and you're freaking out, you never make great decisions and choices from there. Unless you've got unbelievable good guidance in the middle of that, which does happen occasionally. It's like I've had angels yell at me in a moment of crisis, and it's crystal clear, so that actually will work too. But I would prefer for us to do our choices and decisions from the calmest, most centered place we could. All the planets remind you that pushing is going to get you nowhere. Slow and steady is the game. Everything is in winter signs. All the planets are in winter signs. Nothing is going to move quickly. Everything is sort of frozen. So take a couple of hours a day to do one project. Then rest. Fix a healthy meal for yourself and your family. You may notice the desire to be very critical and skepticism may show up. Do not give those thoughts a lot of power. Many are doing above and beyond the call of duty, and we need to have their backs, like the doctors, the nurses, the hospital staff, the cleaning staff. Invest your time and energy into things that solve problems rather than generate more fear and problems. So, I'd love to say the astrology is getting so much better, but it's just not getting better. And so we all are going to have to just take this one step at a time so we can do this. Well, we have to do it. We really don't have a choice. So it's kind of like we're doing this one way or the other, and it's going to be awesome. It really is going to be awesome. And I am so sad that some people are not going to make it through this cycle. But it's an important cycle that's going to wake us all up. So my quote for the day is, again, another poem. So sometimes I get on a poetry bent, as many of you probably know by reading my stuff. There's something about poetry that is really about the rhythms and the patterns of divinity as it tries to translate into this world. And I think poetry and math and music are all amazingly connected, and color. So I think light and music and poetry and rhythms and sound vibrations and sound currents are all really connected. And right now, those to me are my saving graces. So I hope you enjoy this poem. In this moment of time and space, we are being asked to surrender in grace. You cannot stop what is about to unfold. Mother Nature requires a lesson to be told. You are being shown where ego is hate. You are being shown where lies conflate. This moment is going to be filled with strife, and many will have to pay with their life. It is no longer about what is right or wrong. It is no longer about what appears to be strong. It is about what humanity has repeatedly done Anger has been expressed with many types of guns. We have caused this world to collapse. We have forgotten and allowed love to lapse. We are the evil that spreads toxic waste, then thinks money will justify what we have defaced. Okay, so my vlog for today. As things escalate, it becomes more and more important to stay put and hold tight to family. What is working well is that many are calling and connecting to those who have not had the time to connect to over the years and saying, I care and I love you and you're very important in my life is very important to each of us as death and disease are stalking about our world. There are so many things that can be done that calm and soothe. Try to do those. Years ago, they did a study as to what smells supported men and women to stay calm, feel loved, and supported hormones to be aligned. What was interesting is that for men, 100% calmed down and felt love to the smell of cinnamon buns cooking in the oven. It brought male teenagers out of their rooms and had everyone engage in the kitchen. After all, I believe that every kitchen is kind of the heart of a home. But women, of course, are not so simple or easy. They found that there was not one specific thing that calmed women down. For some, lavender works. Options vary drastically. I love the smell of oranges, all kinds. Mandarin, navel oranges, all the kinds of oranges. I love the smell of onions cooking in butter. Gosh, it's a great smell. I just love that smell. I am sure you also have your favorites. No matter what they are, allow those smells into your life right now. It's one of the reasons that I try to do a lot of cooking, and I try to do a lot of homemade cooking because as I slice open an orange to use the juice for something, it's very enlivening and refreshing. And when I smell onions and butter cooking, it reminds me of my home when I was a kid because my mother is an amazing cook, obviously. And so it just it feels like home. It feels like safety. So now, with the smell thing, don't overdo it. I know how people can take things to an extreme. So, too much of anything is a bad thing. So tea tree oil is very toxic to dogs. So you don't want to use a lot of tea tree oil if you have dogs. And so you need to be careful as you're kind of doing things. But, the main thing is to just allow those smells to drift in and gift you with their essence that allows love to flow and kindness to be shared. But don't forget those cinnamon buns. Yum. And take some to your neighbors and leave them at the door. That would be a wonderful gesture. And share the love. And remember that no matter what, share the love. Turn off the news. Just look at the headlines on the internet. Don't get yourself stressed out. Okay. You guys take care. Talk to you later. Bye.